Welcome back to Subway Builder in Chicago. Today we are going to finish building the CTA lines. We just have the blue line left. Last video we built the orange, green, and pink. So once we build the blue, we'll be done with the CTA system. So let's get started. So we're going to start with a Google Earth tour to follow the blue line path, which here is underground and it goes from downtown under Milwaukee Avenue. And you can see Chicago Station here and then Division. So this is a pretty dense area, which should get some good usage once we build it in the game. All along here, now the blue line is elevated. And here is Logan Square, which used to be the end of the blue line, but that was extended in the 70s, I think. So you can see where they extended it into the median of the highway, which is obviously going to get less usage because there's not a lot of walkability around these stations. I mean, it's not the worst thing. It's good to have them, but compared to the older stations, these are much more like suburban design, not really great for being inside the city. But it is nice that it was later also extended to O'Hare, which is one of the world's busiest airports, so that is good to see. You can see as we get to the end of the line, it's very suburban, and this is where it enters underground into O'Hare. So the CTA station is underneath there and then connects to the O'Hare Airport Transit shuttle that goes between the terminals. Which you can see here, there's 3 stations for those 3 terminals and then another station here at Terminal 5, and it connects up to the rental car facility and the metro station. So you can see we've got a whole lot of demand at O'Hare. So once we build this, it should be pretty heavily used. So let's start building just the O'Hare branch, starting at Clark and Lake. I'm trying to work it under these buildings because I think it's a deep tunnel to connect up to Milwaukee Avenue, and then it is probably a cut and cover type of station and track. But once it gets to Division, it pulls away from Milwaukee Avenue and it's slightly offset, and this is where the track goes above ground. So it's a little difficult to fit in the stations between all of those buildings, just like we saw on other lines that run between the buildings on elevated tracks. But we're able to fit it in and it works decently. And this is where it goes back underground to go into Logan Square Station. And this tunnel on Kimball was actually built in the 1970s when they extended the blue line from Logan Square to Jefferson Park. So there were 2 extensions, I believe. One extension from Logan Square to Jefferson Park, which added all of these median stations. And then later another extension from Jefferson Park to O'Hare, also in the 70s. So you can see we're just running this track along the median of the highway. And once we get out to this area, there's pretty wide gaps between the stations. Much further distance, more like a commuter rail instead of a city subway. And finally working our way into O'Hare. So it goes back underground and into a tunnel underneath the airport here. Okay, so that's the O'Hare branch. Now we're going to go the other way along towards the Forest Park branch. And the blue line runs under Dearborn in the loop. So this Dearborn subway was built around 1940, so around World War II. And the LaSalle blue line connects with that metro station above ground. And here, the Clinton blue line station is the closest station to Union Station, and we will work on that connection in future videos. And here, as we continue along the Forest Park branch, you can see UIC. So this will probably get a lot of commuters going to UIC and also to the medical district here, Illinois Medical District. There's a lot of hospitals and schools in this area. And the United Center is just up there. So I have a lot of commuters coming into this area, hopefully using our new Forest Park branch. And you can see in the median along the highway here, we have more stations all the way to Forest Park. But this part of the blue line actually has some of the slowest zones on the CTA system because these tracks are pretty old now and haven't been properly maintained. So that's not going to show up in our simulation. The trains will run at normal speed in the game, but in real life the trains go very slow all along this part of the Forest Park branch. So that's one of CTA's priorities, I think, now is to get the blue line operating at normal speeds on the Forest Park branch. So let's start building the rest of the blue line in the game. Here you can see how closely spaced the stations are. So it goes pretty slowly through the loop, through those stations, before it goes back out above ground and into the highway median. Here I'm building a little tunnel between the blue and red line at Jackson. So if you've ever made a transfer there, you know there's a somewhat famous tunnel that connects those two stations. So we're building that. So the game will consider those to be like one station, and hopefully people will be able to transfer easily between those two stations. And here we enter back above ground in the highway median stations. I'm going to let the time lapse run, and then we will talk about the system once it's all built. Okay, so that is built, and we can now put in the route and the service pattern on our tracks that we built. This line was pretty expensive. The whole thing in the game was like $4.5 billion, but it is also, I think, the longest line. So hopefully it will add a lot of riders to our system. And I'm going to run the simulation for a few days, and we will analyze the data after. Okay, so it's been running for a while. You can see we've added some riders to the system. We're at about 135,000 transit users in the whole region. You can see there's quite a bit of blue along the blue line now, except there are still some areas where, a lot of areas where we see red, which means people are driving. So the CTA system is good at getting people downtown, but you can see there's still a lot of gaps that it doesn't serve. So that's something we're going to work on. But looking at the stations now, Clark and Lake is our busiest station, which makes sense because that's the point where almost all of the lines connect, except for the red line. And then Jackson, which is where the blue and red connect. And O'Hare is number 3, which makes sense. That's one of our busiest and most concentrated employment centers. So you can see all that blue, all those blue dots are people using transit. But we've still got a lot of gaps, and that's something we're going to work on. You can see Midway and University of Chicago. I'm just looking at some destinations. O'Hare, a lot of people that go to O'Hare are using transit, which is good. Loyola, Northwestern. But in the next couple of videos, we're going to start building the Metra lines, which are more of the suburban commuter. So we'll see if that helps bring up the ridership. I think a good goal would be to get the whole Chicago system in our game at like 20% of the region using transit. But we're going to have to do some work on improving and expanding the system to get there. So let's follow along the blue line train here. This is in the game around 7:30 in the morning, so we should expect to see a lot of people taking it downtown to work or to UIC, to the university area or the hospital area. And it looks like it's getting pretty good usage as it makes its way from O'Hare to downtown. And here we would expect a lot of people to get off at Clark and Lake or any of the other downtown stations, which it looks like did happen. There's still some people on board, probably going to UIC. And yes, now the train's empty. So as the blue line goes back out to Forest Park, it's pretty empty because there's not a lot of destinations along this branch. It's mostly residential. So most people would probably be getting on to go the opposite way downtown in the morning. But we will follow the train along in the opposite direction now. So now let's see the train in the opposite direction. Now this is the evening, around 4:30 p.m. 4:30 to 5 o'clock. So we should see people leaving downtown and going back to the residential area or to O'Hare. Looks like we've got some people riding all the way from Forest Park and staying on. And not a lot of people got on in the loop, but there are people still on the train as it makes its way along the O'Hare branch. It looks like people are staying on all the way to the end of the line as we get towards O'Hare. And that's the end. So that's the entire CTAL system. We're at almost 150,000 transit users just on the rail lines and almost 5% of the whole entire region. So you can see it's getting pretty decent usage, but the entire region is much more than just these couple of lines. So in the next videos, we'll be building metro lines. And then once we have the entire existing CTA and Metra system, I'm going to be working on improving the system based on plans that I have seen that address a lot of the problems that exist, because we need a more regional system to get the entire region covered with transit. So let me know if you liked this and if you want to see a particular metro line be built first, let me know. And like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.